Some debts can't be paid with silver, and some sins can't be washed away with rain. Jedediah knew that, staring at the crumpled letter. The wind, a mournful tenor in the sandstone eaves of Canyon de Chelly, seemed to whisper the same truth. The paper, thin and brittle, crackled in his calloused hand, each crease a fresh line etched on his own weathered face. Mary was in trouble. Elias Thorne was involved. The creak of saddle leather was the only other sound, the rhythmic protest of old gear under a blazing sun. Jedediah refolded the letter, tucking it deep into his vest, close to his heart, though it offered little comfort. Reach Mary in Silverton before Thorne does. Roughly 60 miles. 2 days hard ride, if his horse held. And if Thorne didn't cut him off. The sun beat down, and he pulled his hat lower, the brim casting a shadow that barely touched the worry lines around his eyes. 60 miles. It might as well have been 1,000, with the weight of what he knew pressing down on him. Thorne de Tour. The name itself was a brand, seared into the hides of honest men across the territory. A rattlesnake in gentleman's clothing. Is the price worth the trail ahead? He spurred his horse, a sturdy Appaloosa named Paint, into a lope, the rhythm a grim counterpoint to the wind's lament. He needed to be moving, needed to be doing. Staring at the letter wouldn't save Mary. Riding might. But could he truly outrun Thorne? The metallic click of a Winchester lever echoed in his mind, a phantom sound, a prelude to violence. Jedediah hadn't used a gun in years, not since. He pushed the memory back, burying it beneath the grit and dust of the trail. He wouldn't think of that now. Mary needed him. The air grew thick with dread as the sun climbed higher, baking the canyon floor. He risked a glance back. Nothing but swirling dust devils and the long, snaking trail. Yet, he felt eyes on him, the prickling sensation of being watched. Was it Thorne? Or just the ghosts of the canyon, restless spirits guarding their ancient home? Thorne's reputation preceded him, a storm cloud of fear and intimidation. But there were whispers, too, rumors carried on the same wind that now buffeted Jedediah's face, tales of a past kindness, a flicker of humanity in a man consumed by greed. He'd heard Thorne, years ago, had shared his meager rations with a starving Apache family during a harsh winter. Could it be true? Or were even those whispers just another part of Thorne's carefully constructed facade? He pulled his canteen, the water warm and metallic. He swallowed, trying to push down the fear that threatened to choke him. Mary was strong, but Thorne was relentless. What hold did Thorne have over her? The letter offered no clues, only the desperate plea for help, the single word. Silverton? The sun bleeds crimson, painting the canyon walls in shades of fire and blood. He needed to find shelter soon, a place to rest Paint and gather his own strength. He scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of civilization, any break in the endless expanse of rock and scrub. A small overhang, barely big enough for one man and a horse, offered meager protection. He urged Paint towards it, the animals breathing heavy with exertion. He dismounted, loosening the cinch and letting Paint graze on the sparse vegetation. The dry cough of a man dying of consumption seemed to hang in the air, a phantom sound carried on the wind. It reminded him of Caleb, Mary's father, and the promise he'd made. He closed his eyes, the image of Caleb's gaunt face burned into his memory. A promise made on a deathbed. A secret entrusted. Protect her, Jedediah. And never, never tell anyone about the silver. He opened his eyes, the setting sun casting long, distorted shadows. Reach Mary in Silverton before Thorne does. The words echoed in his mind. A relentless drum beat. But what if protecting Mary meant breaking his promise to Caleb? What price was he willing to pay to save her? The canyon echoes with silence as darkness descends, broken only by the soft snorting of paint and the distant howl of a coyote. He built a small fire, the flames casting flickering shadows on the canyon walls. He ate a handful of dried beef, chewing slowly, his mind racing. He knew Thorne, or at least he knew of him. Everyone did. Thorne didn't just want things, he took them. And he didn't care who he hurt in the process. Jedediah had stayed out of such affairs for years. Lived quiet. But Mary had always been his blind spot. His weakness. How had Thorne found her? What did he want? And how long before he realized Jedediah was coming? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, despite the heat of the fire. What if mercy ruins justice? He heard it then, a faint sound carried on the wind. The rhythmic thud of horses' hooves, growing louder with each passing moment. Thorne. He was sure of it. He doused the fire, plunging the canyon into darkness. He grabbed his rifle, the cold steel a stark contrast to his sweat-slicked palm. He led Paint deeper into the overhang, shielding them both from view. The horses drew closer, their riders silhouetted against the moonlit sky. He counted 4. Thorne's men. But where was Thorne himself? They stopped just beyond the overhang, their voices low and menacing. Jedediah strained to hear, his heart pounding in his chest. They were talking about a Navajo guide, someone who knew the trails, someone who could lead them to Silverton. What if justice kills hope? The scent of rain teases the air, a promise of relief that never quite arrives. He heard the sound of a man crying out, a muffled scream that was quickly silenced. They were torturing the guide. For information. About Mary? Jedediah's hand tightened on his rifle. He had a choice to make. Intervene and risk losing precious time, perhaps even his life. Or stay hidden, protect himself and Paint, and continue his journey to Silverton. But could he live with himself if he ignored the guide's suffering? Could he truly save Mary if he sacrificed his own soul? Jedediah Stone is at the center of what follows. Elias Thorne still opposes him. The metallic click of his Winchester lever seemed deafening in the oppressive quiet. 60 miles. That was all that stood between Thorne and Mary. 60 miles and the setting sun turning the canyon walls to blood. But every minute spent here, every choice delayed, shrunk that distance. He knew what he had to do. Paint shifted beneath him, sensing his rising tension. Jedediah patted the horse's neck, a silent apology. This wasn't Paint's fight, but the horse was loyal, and Jedediah knew he wouldn't have a chance without him. He took a slow, deliberate breath. The guide screamed again, a ragged, desperate sound. It twisted in Jedediah's gut. He thought of Mary, her laughter, the way she always managed to find the good in people, even when they didn't deserve it. Could he live with himself if he turned a blind eye to this man's suffering, knowing that Mary could be next? The air grew thick with dread, a palpable weight pressing down on him. He eased Paint forward, the creak of saddle leather, a stark counterpoint to the men's cruel laughter. He had to be smart. He couldn't just ride in, guns blazing. Not with 4 of them. Not if he wanted to live long enough to reach Silverton. Who pays if he chooses wrong? He circled wide, using the shadows to his advantage, moving like a ghost through the underbrush. He needed to get closer, to assess the situation, to find an opening. He dismounted, tying paint to a scrubby juniper. He crawled on his belly, the rough sand scraping against his skin, until he reached the edge of the overhang. He peered through the darkness. The men had the guide tied to a mesquite tree. Thorne wasn't among them. They were using a hot iron, pressing it against the guide's skin. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. Jedediah felt a surge of white-hot rage. He wanted to kill them, to tear them apart with his bare hands. But he couldn't afford to lose control. He had to think. He spotted their horses, tethered loosely near the edge of the clearing. That was his chance. If he could spook the horses, create a diversion, he might be able to free the guide and slip away unnoticed. But what if they caught him? What if they killed the guide before he could reach him? He picked up a handful of pebbles and tossed them, one by one, into the darkness behind the horses. The animals shifted nervously. He tossed another handful, harder this time. One of the horses whinnied, pulling at its tether. What was that? One of the men barked. What will it cost him now? Just the wind, another replied. Jedediah tossed the last of the pebbles, aiming for the rump of the nearest horse. The horse screamed and reared, breaking free of its tether. The other horses followed suit, stampeding into the darkness. The men cursed, scrambling to catch the horses. Jedediah seized his opportunity. He sprinted into the clearing, his rifle raised. What if mercy ruins justice? Hold it right there, he yelled. The men froze, turning to face him. Their eyes widened in surprise. Let him go, Jedediah said, his voice hard. Is the price worth the trail ahead? Who the hell are you? One of the men sneered. Someone who's tired of watching innocent people suffer, Jedediah replied. The men exchanged glances. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and caught off guard. But they weren't about to back down without a fight. What if justice kills hope? You made a mistake coming here, one of them growled, reaching for his gun. Jedediah didn't hesitate. He fired. The man crumpled to the ground, clutching his chest. The other men dove for cover, returning fire. Can he reach it before the light dies? The canyon echoed with the sound of gunfire. Jedediah ducked behind a rock, reloading his rifle. He knew he couldn't stay here. He was exposed, vulnerable. He had to get the guide and get out. He peered around the rock, trying to locate the other men. He spotted one of them, taking aim. Jedediah fired again. The man screamed and fell. Two left. But for how long? He darted forward, dodging bullets, and reached the tree where the guide was tied. He quickly cut the ropes, freeing the man. Can he reach it before the light dies? The guide slumped to the ground, weak and disoriented. Jedediah helped him to his feet. Can you walk? He asked. The guide nodded weakly. Who pays if he chooses wrong? We need to get out of here, Jedediah said. Now. They stumbled through the darkness, heading towards paint. The remaining two men were closing in, firing wildly. Jedediah stopped, turning to face them. He had to buy the guide some time. What will it cost him now? Go! He shouted at the guide. Get to my horse. Head west. The guide hesitated, then nodded and ran. Jedediah raised his rifle, taking aim. He fired twice. Both men fell, silent. What if mercy ruins justice? He didn't wait to see if they were dead. He turned and ran, following the guide's tracks. He reached Paint, helping the guide to mount. "Hold on tight," he said. He swung himself into the saddle, and they rode off into the darkness, leaving the dead men behind. Is the price worth the trail ahead? The wind whistling through the canyon wall seemed to mock him. He had saved the guide, but at what cost? He had wasted valuable time, and he had made enemies. Thorne would know he was coming, and he would be waiting. How many miles had they lost? Now 58 miles. Every gunshot carried. Every delay, a death sentence for Mary. The sun bleeds crimson on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. They rode hard through the night, pushing Paint to his limits. The guide, whose name was Hosky, was weak but grateful. He knew the trails, and he guided them through the maze of canyons and mesas, avoiding the main roads. But Jedediah couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. He kept glancing back, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. "They will come," Hosky said quietly. "Thorne does not forgive." Jedediah knew that. He just hoped he could reach Mary before Thorne did. What if justice kills hope? They rode until dawn, stopping only to rest Paint and give Hosky some water. The scent of rain teases the air. By first light, they'd covered some ground. 54 miles study. But Thorne was still out there. What if he was leading them into a trap? What if Hosky was secretly working for Thorne? Dread hung heavy, a blanket smothering the canyons. Jedediah tasted the trail's grit, felt the wind's bite. Winchester's metallic click answered his horizon scan. Hosky's dry cough echoed their fragility. "They will not give up," Hosky rasped, barely audible. "Thorne wants what he wants. Can he reach it before the light dies?" Jedediah grunted, urging Paint onward. 51 miles. Each stride a victory, each breath a prayer. He glanced at Hosky, drawn and pale. Could he even make it? He knew this land, every shadow. But so did Thorne, armed with ruthless ambition and killers aplenty. Was he leading Hosky to his death too? They found an alcove behind boulders. Jedediah helped Hosky dismount, Paint gratefully resting. Dried meat and water offered, sparingly taken, eyes resigned. "We must keep moving," Jedediah said, voice firm. "Silverton is still far." Hosky nodded, pushing up. "I know a shortcut. A narrow pass. Faster, but dangerous. Is the price worth the trail ahead?" Jedediah hesitated. Shortcuts were traps, but they were losing ground. 48 miles. He had to trust Hosky. He had to trust someone. "Lead the way," Jedediah said, saddle leather creaking mournfully. The pass was treacherous, a winding cliffside path. Paint carefully stepped on loose shale. Howling wind threatened to tear them off. Rifle ready. Senses sharp. Jedediah felt Thorne's eyes. Unseen. Who pays if he chooses wrong? What if it was a dead end? What if Thorne waited? The sun climbed, casting long shadows. The air thinned, biting. Hosky stumbled, nearly falling. Jedediah grabbed him, pulling him back. "Easy," Jedediah said, voice strained. "Almost through. What will it cost him now?" Hosky nodded, pale and sweating. They pressed on, canyon echoing with the wind. Finally, they emerged, the landscape opening. Jedediah sighed in relief. They had made it. Briefly, dust rose in the distance. A lot of dust. A large party approached. What if mercy ruins justice? Thorne, Husky whispered, dread filling his voice. Jedediah cursed. Trapped. The pass too narrow to turn. The plain offered no cover. 45 miles. He had to make a stand. He dismounted, helping Husky down. Stay here, he said, voice calm, gut churning. I'll hold them off. What if justice kills hope? Husky looked at him, fear and gratitude mixing. You cannot fight them all, he said. Maybe not, Jedediah replied, raising his rifle. But I can buy you some time. Husky's family, if Thorne succeeds. They can't know I helped him. The riders grew closer, silhouettes sharp. Winchester's click sounded again, his own. Jedediah breathed, bracing. What if mercy ruins justice? What if his sacrifice was in vain? What if Thorne still caught Mary? Crimson bled across the sky, a fiery warning. Jedediah knew this was it. He might not survive, but he had to try. He had to give Mary a chance. He waited, finger on the trigger, heart pounding. The riders were almost upon him. He saw their faces, hate and determination burning. Can he reach it before the light dies? He fired. The first shot dropped a rider. The second found its mark. But too many. Too many for one man. He worked the lever, firing fast, but they kept coming. Bullets whizzed past, kicking up dust. Searing pain in his shoulder, ignored. He had to keep fighting. He had to buy Husky more time. Is the price worth the trail ahead? 42 miles, dot guy. Gunpowder choked the air. Gunfire roared in the canyon. Jedediah was surrounded, outnumbered, but refused to give up. He fought like a cornered wolf, rifle spitting lead, body a shield. He saw Thorne, riding at the head, face a mask of fury. Thorne raised his rifle, taking aim. Who pays if he chooses wrong? Jedediah knew this was the end. But even as he braced, a glimmer of hope flickered. He had done everything he could. He had bought Mary sometime. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Can he survive Thorne's wrath long enough for Mary to live? The shot rang out. But it wasn't aimed at him. What will it cost him now? The rider beside Thorne slumped, another crumpling to the dust. Chaos erupted among Thorne's men, horses rearing, men screaming. A volley of arrows, silent death against the roar of gunfire. Husky died. He hadn't stayed put. Jedediah risked a glance, seeing Husky kneeling behind a rock, quiver emptying with startling speed and deadly accuracy. The attack broke Thorne's charge. He roared a sound of pure rage and wheeled his horse around, trying to regain control. Jedediah used the moment to reload, the metallic click of the Winchester a counterpoint to the wind whistling through the canyon walls. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Could Husky's courage have doomed them all? The scent of rain teases the air, a false promise in this arid land. It wouldn't be enough to help them, just enough to make the dust cling. Thorne rallied his men, pointing towards Husky. A handful peeled off, heading for the rocks. Jedediah fired again, dropping another rider, but he knew it was a delaying tactic at best. How many more would fall before Husky was silenced? Husky, get out of here! Jedediah yelled, hoping his voice carried over the din. Head east now. Husky didn't acknowledge him, just kept firing. Stubborn fool. Jedediah knew he had to draw the fire away from Husky, give him a chance to escape. He charged forward, firing from the hip, a whirlwind of lead and fury. Thorne, distracted, turned his attention back to Jedediah, eyes burning with hatred. Can he reach it before the light dies? 40 miles. Every bullet fired, every second lost, widened the gap between Mary and safety. Thorne spurred his horse forward, closing the distance. Jedediah knew he couldn't outrun him, couldn't outgun him. He had to think, had to find a way to turn the tables. But how? He risked another glance at Husky. The Navajo had vanished. Good. At least one of them had a chance. But what if Husky was captured? What information would Thorne extract? Thorne was almost upon him, close enough to see the spittle flying from his mouth as he screamed. Jedediah braced for the impact, knowing this could be the end. He fired one last shot, aiming for Thorne's horse, hoping to unseat him, create some chaos. The horse screamed, reared, throwing Thorne to the ground. What will it cost him now? Jedediah didn't wait. He spurred his own horse, turning away from the fallen Thorne and the remaining riders, heading east, towards the rising sun. He had a small window of opportunity, a chance to escape. He had to take it. He could hear Thorne's enraged shouts behind him, the thundering of hooves as his men gave chase. He leaned low over his horse, urging it onward, pushing it to its limit. 38 miles. The sun bled crimson, painting the canyon walls in shades of blood and fire. Jedediah knew they wouldn't give up easily. Thorne was relentless, driven by a need for vengeance that burned hotter than the desert sun. He glanced back. They were gaining on him. He needed cover, needed a place to make a stand. Ahead, he saw a narrow defile, a break in the canyon wall leading to higher ground. It was a risk, a potential trap, but it was his only chance. He urged his horse towards the opening, praying it wasn't a dead end. What price for this desperate gamble? The defile was narrow, barely wide enough for his horse to pass. The canyon walls rose sharply on either side, casting long shadows. The air grew thick with dread, the silence broken only by the creak of saddle leather and the pounding of his heart. He could hear the pursuit behind him, growing closer. He had to be ready. He reached the top of the defile, emerging onto a rocky plateau, overlooking the canyon. It wasn't much, but it offered some cover, some advantage. He dismounted, pulling his rifle from its scabbard. He scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of Thorne and his men. They would be here soon. 36 miles. The wind whistling through the canyon walls seemed to mock him, carrying the scent of rain that never came. He knew he couldn't stay here for long. He was exposed, vulnerable. But he had to buy more time. He had to slow them down. Is the price worth the trail ahead? He found a rocky outcrop, a natural barricade. He positioned himself behind it, rifle ready, waiting. He could hear the approach of Thorne's men, the clatter of hooves on stone, the murmur of voices. They were close. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. This was it. How much longer can he delay them? They appeared over the crest of the defile, one by one, their faces grim, their eyes filled with hate. Thorne was at the head, his face a mask of fury. He raised his rifle, taking aim. Jedediah didn't wait. He fired. The metallic click of a Winchester lever echoed in the canyon. 34 miles. The first shot found its mark, dropping another rider. But there were still too many. He worked the lever, firing again and again, but they kept coming. Bullets whizzed past, kicking up dust. The air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder. He felt a searing pain in his arm but ignored it. He had to keep fighting. Who pays if he chooses wrong? Thorne dismounted, advancing on foot, rifle raised. His eyes locked on Jedediah's, burning with a cold, unwavering hatred. He stopped, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "You can't win, Stone," he said, his voice echoing in the canyon. "It's over." Jedediah didn't reply. He just kept firing. What choice did he have? 32 miles. He knew Thorne was right. He couldn't win. But he could make them pay. He could make them bleed for every inch of ground. He could buy Mary more time. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Is he truly fighting for justice? Or something more selfish? He squeezed the trigger again, watching another rider fall. But he was running out of ammunition. He glanced down at his belt. Only a few rounds left. He had to make them count. He had to be smart. Thorne was getting closer, moving from rock to rock, using the terrain to his advantage. He was a skilled hunter, a ruthless killer. Jedediah knew he was outmatched. But he refused to give up. He would fight to the bitter end. What if mercy ruins justice? 30 miles. The canyon echoed with silence, broken only by the occasional gunshot and the whistling of the wind. The sun was sinking lower in the sky, casting long, ominous shadows. Night was coming. And with it, the cold, the darkness, and the certainty of death. What price will Thorne extract for Jedediah's interference? Jedediah Stone is at the center of what follows. 28 miles. He sighted down the barrel, his vision blurring. Focus. One shot. He squeezed the trigger. A man fell, clutching his chest. Thorne kept coming, relentless. What will it cost him now? The sun bled crimson, painting the canyon walls. Soon dark. He needed cover. Pinned down here. He scrambled back, low. The wind a mournful dirge. The boulders further down, his only chance. He sprinted. Bullets snapped. Dread thickened the air. A sharp sting in his side. Another hit. Ignored. Adrenaline too. He reached the boulders, diving, gasping. What if mercy ruins justice? 26 miles. He ripped open his shirt. A graze, bleeding. He tore a cloth, binding it tight. It would have to do. He reloaded, fingers clumsy. Thorne's voice echoed, laced with menace. Nowhere left to run, Stone. Just give it up. What if justice kills hope? Jedediah spot. Easier for whom? He peered through the rocks. Thorne advanced, his men fanning out, encircling. Trapped. He had to think. The crevice behind him. Unknown. But better than nothing. He squeezed through. Dark, damp, the air thick with dust and something ancient. Hands outstretched, feeling his way. Can he reach it before the light dies? 24 miles. The crevice opened into a chamber. Running water. He followed, pushing through vines. A narrow ledge overlooking a chasm. A waterfall cascaded down, disappearing. Thorne's men shouted, searching. They wouldn't look here. Safe, for now. But how long? And where did this chasm lead? He looked down into the darkness. No bottom visible. A long drop. His only way out. He took a breath, steeling himself. He had to trust there was something below. He lowered himself over the edge, clinging to the rock, fingers scraping. He started to climb down, slowly, carefully, the wind carrying Thorne's shouts. 22 miles. Is the price worth the trail ahead? The rock was slick. Difficult grip. Muscles, screaming, hands raw-eye. He slipped, feet losing purchase. He dangled, fingers his only hold. He strained, pulling himself back up, heart pounding. He had to keep going. Not now. Not ever. He continued down, slow, deliberate, each step a victory. He felt the spray of the waterfall, cold. He reached the bottom, landing on soft sand. Who pays if he chooses wrong? He was in a narrow cave, cool and damp. A small pool. He drank deeply. He looked around. A narrow opening in the back, leading into darkness. 20 miles. He didn't know where it led, but he had to keep moving. Thorne would find him. He stepped into the darkness, the scent of rain teasing the air. What will it cost him now? The tunnel sloped downwards, the air colder. Dripping water echoed. He walked for hours, legs aching. Finally, faint light. He quickened his pace, heart pounding. He emerged into a hidden valley, bathed in moonlight. A beautiful sight, a secret oasis. A stream meandered, lined with lush vegetation. Trees, flowers, animals. A different world. Is the price worth the trail ahead? 18 miles. But he couldn't linger. He still had a long way to go. He crossed the valley, following the stream. A narrow path led up the other side. He started to climb, muscles protesting. As he crested the ridge, he saw it. In the distance, a campfire. Silhouetted against the flames, Elias Thorne. He had cut him off. What if mercy ruins justice? 17 miles. Thorne wasn't alone. A dozen men, armed. He was trapped again. How did Thorne know? Did someone betray him? He dropped, crawling behind rocks. He had to get past them to reach Mary. But how? Outnumbered, outgunned, exhausted. No, not Dusty Mary. What if justice kills hope? He watched Thorne and his men trying to discern their intentions. Waiting for something. Someone. A trap. The metallic click of a Winchester lever broke the silence. 16 miles. Can he reach it before the light dies? A rider emerged from the shadows, riding towards the campfire. As he got closer, Jedediah recognized him. One of Thorne's men, the one he had wounded earlier. Alive, but barely. The rider dismounted, staggering towards Thorne. He spoke in a low voice. Jedediah could hear enough. The rider had found Jedediah's trail, knew where he was headed. Thorne listened, grim. He nodded. He turned to his men, issuing orders. They mounted their horses, preparing to move out. What if justice kills hope? Jedediah knew what he had to do. He had to stop them, even if it meant sacrificing himself. He couldn't let them reach Mary. He had to protect her, no matter the cost. Is the cost of protecting Mary worth his life? Jedediah Stone is at the center of what follows. Elias Thorne still opposes him. Is the cost of protecting Mary worth his life? He gripped his rifle, its cold steel, a grim comfort. 16 miles. He had to close that gap. The wind whistled through the canyon walls, carrying the scent of pine and the distant echo of Thorne's men, preparing to ride. He could hear the creak of saddle leather, the jingle of spurs. He crawled further behind the rocks, trying to get a better angle. He needed a plan, something more than a desperate charge. Thorne had too many men, too much firepower. The sun began to bleed crimson, painting the canyon walls in shades of blood orange and deep shadow. He spotted a narrow gully, a dry wash cutting through the rocks. It offered cover, a way to get closer without being seen. But it would take time, precious time. How much time did he have before Thorne rode off, leaving him behind? What if this path is a trap? He made his decision. Time was running out. Mary's life might depend on this. He started to crawl, inching his way towards the gully, the sharp rocks digging into his knees and elbows. The air grew thick with dread, heavy with the unspoken threat of violence. He reached the gully, dropping into its shallow depths. He moved quickly now, crouching low, using the uneven terrain to shield himself from view. He could hear Thorne's men getting closer, their voices growing louder. He paused, listening. Thorne was giving orders, directing his men to spread out, to search the area. They suspected he was close. He pressed himself against the cool rock, his heart pounding in his chest. Thorne's voice, cold and hard, cut through the air. Stone is a stubborn man. He won't give up easily. He'll be coming for us. Be ready. The dry cough of a man dying of consumption echoed nearby. The wounded rider. Who pays if he chooses wrong? Jedediah moved on, deeper into the gully. He had to get past them. He had to reach Mary. But how could he outwit a man like Thorne, a man who seemed to anticipate his every move? What price will he pay for his decisions? He reached the end of the gully, emerging into a small clearing. He was closer now, much closer. He could see Thorne clearly, his face etched with grim determination in the flickering firelight. 15 miles. Thorne's men were mounted, ready to ride. They were waiting for something, for a signal. He saw Thorne raise his hand, a silent command. They were about to move out. Jedediah knew he had to act now, before it was too late. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he had to do. He rose to his feet, leveling his rifle. The metallic click of a Winchester lever shattered the silence. Thorne whirled around, his eyes narrowing. Stone! He roared, his voice filled with fury. Jedediah fired. What if mercy ruins justice? The shot rang out, echoing through the canyon. One of Thorne's men slumped in his saddle, falling to the ground. Chaos erupted. Horses reared, men shouted, guns blazed. Jedediah dropped to the ground, taking cover behind a large rock. He fired again, hitting another of Thorne's men. He had to keep them pinned down, give himself a chance to escape. How long can he last? The air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder, the sharp crack of gunfire. Bullets whizzed past him, kicking up dust and rock. He returned fire, aiming carefully, trying to make every shot count. What will it cost him now? He saw Thorne dismount, drawing his own weapon. Their eyes met across the clearing, a silent battle of wills. Thorne's face was a mask of rage, his eyes burning with hatred. Jedediah knew this was it. This was the moment of truth. He had to face Thorne, to stop him from reaching Mary. But could he defeat him? Could he survive this deadly encounter? What if he's the one to fall? He took another shot, forcing Thorne to take cover. He used the opportunity to move, scrambling to a new position, trying to gain a better advantage. He had to keep moving, keep fighting. Is the price worth the trail ahead? He could hear the wounded rider coughing, a ragged, desperate sound. He remembered the rider's betrayal, the information he had given to Thorne. He felt a surge of anger, a burning desire for revenge. But he couldn't afford to be distracted. He had to focus on Thorne, on stopping him. He fired again, hitting Thorne in the arm. Thorne cried out in pain, clutching his wound. Jedediah knew this was his chance. He charged forward, firing as he ran. He had to close the distance, to engage Thorne in hand-to-hand combat. He leaped over a fallen log, landing heavily on the other side. Thorne was waiting for him, his face twisted with pain and fury. He raised his gun, aiming at Jedediah's chest. Jedediah braced himself for the impact, for the inevitable pain. But the shot never came. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, moving with lightning speed. It was one of Thorne's own men. The man tackled Thorne, knocking him to the ground. The gun flew from Thorne's hand. What if justice kills hope? Jedediah stared in disbelief. What was happening? Why would one of Thorne's men betray him? What if this is another trap? The man who had tackled Thorne turned to Jedediah. He spoke in a low, urgent voice. "Get out of here, Stone. Get to Mary. I can't hold him for long." Jedediah hesitated. He didn't understand. But he knew he couldn't waste time. He had to trust this man, whoever he was. He had to reach Mary. Can he reach it before the light dies? He turned and ran, disappearing into the shadows. He could hear the sounds of fighting behind him, the grunts and curses of men locked in a desperate struggle. 14 miles. He didn't look back. He had a mission to complete. He had to protect Mary, no matter the cost. He ran through the night, his legs burning, his lungs aching. The wind whistled through the canyon walls, carrying the scent of rain and the faint echo of gunfire. Was the man's sacrifice enough? He had to keep moving. He had to reach her before Thorne did. 13 miles. The sun would rise soon. 13 miles. Sun rising. Saddle leather creaked, a phantom horse in his ears. Days since he'd ridden. Horse. Supplies. Mary Dutt. 12 miles. Coyote howl. Thorne, wounded, enraged, rallying his men. Hunting him. Hunting Jedediah. He pushed harder. Had he underestimated Thorne? 11 miles. Dotika. Scent of rain. Wash away tracks, or trap him in mud. He scanned. Nothing. Yet, they were coming. Could he trust that stranger? 10 miles. Tutti. Sunrise painted the canyon walls. Dread thickened. Scrub pines clung to a rock face. Hiding. Raced. Dight. Delay. Dot. Fatal. He pressed on. Dust caked his tongue. Another mile's price. 9 miles. Stuten. Streamed at dawn adili. Adil told Tirigaudin. Silver ribbon. He knelt, drank. Cold, refreshing, but hunger gnawed. Food needed. Where? Thirst defeat him before Thorne? 8 miles. Hawk. Circled. Exposed. Vulnerable. Shadow of a sandstone pillar. Avoid detection. Hawk patrolled. Warning or hungry bird. 7 miles Stewart. Deserted Navajo Hogan. Die. Crumbling walls. Knife in hand. Empty. Tattered blanket. Broken pot. Life long gone. Sadness. Deep. Hardships. Would Mary face the same if Thorne arrived first? 6 miles. Metallic click of a Winchester lever in his mind. Losing it. Thorne's cruel face. Determination surged. He would not let him win. Protect Mary. Sacrifice himself. He jogged. All day? 5 miles on. Crested a ridge. Silverton in the distance. Hope. So far. Crimson sun bled. Long shadows mocked. Running out of time. Hours left? 4 miles. Riders. Galloping toward him. Thorne's men. Found him. Cursed. Covered Betrayal. Juniper thicket. Held his breath. Riders drew closer. Outsmart them? 3 miles. Riders passed. Grim faces. Didn't see him. Yet. Waited. Out of sight. They'd be back. Searching. Silverton.I. Looms burning. Legs screaming. Outrun them? 2 miles. Sounds of Silverton. Wagons, dogs, saloon music. Klaus. But silence echoed right behind him. Their presence. Closing. Pushed harder. Ignored the pain. Mary's face. Too late? 1 mile. Broke free. Dusty road to Silverton. Town clear. Wooden buildings, bustling streets, safety. But they were there. Thorne and his men. Waiting. Anticipated. Trapped. Dry cough of consumption. Not his. Memory. A promise. What was he willing to give up to keep her safe? He stopped. Couldn't outrun them. Face them. Drew his knife. Steel glinted. They'd pay for every mile. Protect Mary. Even in death. The metallic click of a Winchester lever echoed from Thorne's side. The air grew thick with dread. Dust devils danced in the road, mocking Jedediah's resolve. Well, Stone. Thorne's voice rasped, the sound of wind scraping against sandstone. Didn't expect you'd come this far. Pity. All this running, for nothing. What if mercy ruins justice? Jedediah spat on the dusty ground. It ain't for nothing, Thorne. It's for Mary. Thorne chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Mary Dodondenal. You think she's worth all this? Worth dying for. He gestured to his men who fanned out, cutting off any escape. The canyon echoed with silence. She's just a girl, Stone. A pretty one, I'll grant you. But just a girl. I got plans, bigger plans, and she's a piece of that. You ain't nothing but a rock in my path. Jedediah shifted his weight, the knife a cold weight in his hand. He knew he was outmatched. But he wouldn't go down easy. He remembered the promise he made, the one he might have to break. What was he willing to give up to keep her safe? Would he betray a friend's memory? What do you want, Thorne? Jedediah asked, stalling for time. Maybe, just maybe, someone in Silverton had heard the commotion. Maybe someone would come. Thorne smiled, a cruel, predatory grin. I want you to step aside, Stone. I want you to forget you ever saw Mary. I want you to disappear. And if you do that, maybe, just maybe, I'll let you live. Jedediah knew Thorne was lying. There was no way he'd let him live. He knew too much. He'd seen too much. Is the price worth the trail ahead? That ain't gonna happen, Thorne. Jedediah tightened his grip on the knife. Thorne sighed dramatically. Pity. I always admired your stubbornness, Stone. But it's gonna be the death of you. He nodded to his men. Take him. They surged forward, a wave of bodies and steel. Jedediah lunged, the knife a silver flash in the sun. He caught one man in the arm, the man yelping in pain. But there were too many. He felt a blow to his head, and the world swam. He stumbled, but kept his feet. He had to. For Mary. What will it cost him now? He fought with a ferocity born of desperation. He dodged, weaved, and slashed, but they kept coming. He felt another blow, this time to his ribs. Pain lanced through him, stealing his breath. He coughed, tasted blood. Thorne watched, his eyes cold and calculating. Enough, he said. Just finish it. The men closed in, their faces grim. Jedediah knew this was it. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. He thought of Mary, her face etched in his mind. He hoped she was safe. He hoped she would find happiness, even if he wasn't there to share it with her. A fist connected with his jaw, and he went down, hard. The world spun, then faded to black. Jedediah groaned, consciousness returning in ragged bursts. The scent of rain teased the air, mixing with the coppery tang of blood. He was lying on the dusty road, his body a symphony of pain. His head throbbed, his ribs ached, and his vision was blurry. He tried to move, but his limbs were heavy, unresponsive. He blinked, trying to clear his vision. Thorne stood over him, a dark silhouette against the crimson sun. Well, Stone, Thorne said, his voice low and menacing. Looks like you ain't as tough as you thought you were. Jedediah tried to speak, but his throat was dry and raw. He managed a weak cough. Who pays if he chooses wrong? Don't waste your breath, Thorne said. It's over. I'm gonna take Mary, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. He paused, then leaned closer, his eyes glinting with malice. Unless... Jedediah squinted, focusing on Thorne's face. Unless what? Thorne smiled. Unless you can give me something I want. Something more valuable than Mary. What if justice kills hope? Jedediah knew what he was talking about. The silver lode. The one he'd promised his dying friend he would never reveal. The one that could bring ruin to the Navajo lands. Was Mary's life worth that betrayal? Was his honor worth her death? What price was he willing to pay? You know what I'm talking about, Stone, Thorne pressed. The silver. Tell me where it is, and I'll let Mary go. I swear it. Jedediah hesitated. He could feel the weight of his promise, the weight of his friend's trust. But he could also see Mary's face, her fear, her desperation. He thought of the Navajo, their land, their way of life. He thought of the consequences of his decision. I don't know what you're talking about, Jedediah croaked, trying to buy time. Thorne's smile vanished. Don't play coy with me, Stone. I know you know. And I know you care about that girl. Enough to save her, I reckon. He gestured to his men, who moved closer, their faces impassive. Think about it, Stone. Mary's life, or a pile of rocks. It's your choice. The sun bled crimson, casting long, distorted shadows across the road. The canyon echoed with silence, broken only by Jedediah's ragged breathing. He had a choice to make. A choice that would define him. A choice that would change everything. He knew he couldn't protect both Mary and his promise. Can he reach it before the light dies? Was the potential destruction of the Navajo lands a price he was willing to pay for Mary's safety? He had to decide, and decide quickly. Thorne was running out of patience, and Mary was running out of time. Still 1 mile to Silverton. Jedediah Stone. Elias Thorne. The metallic click of a Winchester lever underscored Thorne's words. Grit on Jedediah's tongue, sun bleeding crimson. Wind whispers of a friend's dying breath. Mary's dimmed light. All right, Jedediah rasped. All right, I'll tell you. Thorne's suspicion flickered beneath triumph. Spit it out, Stone. What if justice kills hope? Jedediah swallowed. North of here. Black Mesa. A narrow canyon, east-facing. Sleeping bare rock formation. The load is behind it. He searched Thorne's face, finding only greed. Show me, Thorne demanded. Is the price worth the trail ahead? Trapped. I'll show you, Jedediah agreed, hollow. But you let Mary go. Now, Donnie. Thorne nodded. Mary stumbled forward, untied. Jedediah, what's going on? What if mercy ruins justice? Get to Silverton. Tell the sheriff. No. I'm not leaving you. You have to. I can handle this. Who pays if he chooses wrong? She hesitated, then ran, swallowed by shadow. Thorne smiled cruel. Now let's ride. He motioned his men forward. Jedediah mounted, dread a stone in his gut. Destruction ahead. Can he reach it before the light dies? They rode, sun searing their backs. The canyon echoed. Jedediah glanced back. 55 miles to Silverton. A small group of Navajo men huddled near the rocks, wary eyes fixed on the riders. Jedediah felt guilt, a betrayal. Thorne saw them, reining in. What do you say, Stone? Ask directions. What will it cost him now? Anger surged. He knew Thorne's intent. Leave them alone, Thorne. They know nothing. Thorne laughed. Everyone knows about the silver. What will it cost him now? He dismounted, approaching the Navajo men. His men fanned out. Well now, Thorne's oily voice dripped. Looking for a silver load. Black Mesa. Silence. What if justice kills hope? Thorne's smile vanished. He gestured. 2 men grabbed a Navajo, dragging him away. Horror etched on the faces of the others. Jedediah dismounted, hand on his gun. 53 miles. Got him? Let him go, Thorne. Leave them alone. He could lead them on a wild goose chase, maybe. But that would endanger Mary all the more. Thorne turned, malice in his eyes. Gonna stop me, Stone? Risk everything for these savages? Jedediah hesitated. Then yes. Thorne laughed, harsh. All right, Stone. Have it your way. He nodded. The men released the Navajo, stepping back, hands on their guns. The air grew thick. Rain teases, promising a storm. Is the price worth the trail ahead?